Sam Bankman-Fried, arrested. Let's talk about this shocking news. What's up, gang? It is I, Carlton Flowers, your crypto pro.
Yay!
And tonight we have shocking news in the world of cryptocurrency. Sam Bankman-Fried, also known as Scam, Bank Run Fraud, has been arrested and will soon be behind bars. It's very ironic, as I was going to give a video update tonight to talk about the possibilities of whether or not SBF would be arrested, detained, or ever charged. And I was leaning for the first time towards the possibility that he would be arrested, accused, and convicted. And here we have an arrest before I could even get the video report done. So what we're going to do is talk about some of the items that were up for discussion and reflect on this big mess that we watched unfold since the beginning of November. Well, I guess there's no question about whether or not SBF will be testifying in front of Congress tomorrow, December 13th. There were a lot of people that were upset with the soft approach by Maxine Waters, thanking SBF for being so forthcoming in talking about the collapse of the scam cryptocurrency exchange FTX. After receiving a lot of heat, she came back and said that a subpoena was definitely on the table, which sounded pretty ridiculous to me and most everyone else who's following this rather bizarre story. It's kind of like watching the news and seeing a bank robbery or a mass murder, and then deciding that we will invite the mass murderer to the police station to have a discussion and answer a few questions without an arrest or threat of arrest. Now here we have the biggest heist, the biggest robbery of American people and people throughout the world in all of history. Yet the politicians were not rushing out to put this man behind bars, or at least hold him and detain him until the evidence could be put together and a conviction made. That was the topic of discussion before I received the news tonight that SBF has been detained in the Bahamas by the Bahamian government on behalf of a request by the United States government. So I applaud my government that I was losing my faith in for doing what was right in putting this man in a secure place and holding him until this hearing where he should be put behind bars. Now, one thing that murks up this whole story, the people who will be asking the questions of SBF in the hearing, politicians, no doubt, the same politicians who many of which took millions and millions of dollars from Sam Bankman-Fried, sat down making discussions with this man for potential legislation that would leave him in a monopoly of the cryptocurrency sector. Now, these same people are going to sit down and grill him over what happened with this collapse. But how will these people be able to hold his toes to the fire and grill him when they were in his back pocket? Early on, when this first unfolded, my fear was that we would never get to the day where justice would be made. Reason being, there's a lot of politicians that have a lot to lose who are in the back pocket of SBF. Now, fortunately for us, he didn't buy off all of our politicians. The great majority were Democrats. There were also some Republicans, including Mitch McConnell. Apparently, $2.5 million went into his campaign fund. So he was covering his bases. Contribute to Democrats, contribute to Republicans. Sit down and help them draft legislation that leaves you in a monopoly. But I think that this has blown up big enough, and there has been so much of a public outcry and so much information coming from honest news channels, unlike the news channels, the newspapers, the big media that is paid off, that we're just throwing softball after softball at Sam Bankman-Fried, even making ridiculous statements like, well, he's finally getting some sleep, having sympathy for the guy that pulled off the biggest bank robbery in the history of the world. Well, thank you to all of the honest journalists, to all of the amazing YouTubers. You had BitBoy running down to the Bahamas trying to catch Sam Bankman-Fried and interview him and ask questions. You had the amazing CoffeeZilla, who 3 times hijacked Twitter Spaces discussions, asking the hard questions until he cornered SBF and got him to pretty much be painted into a corner where he could not wiggle out of the fact that he knew that he was committing fraud when he couldn't explain his way out of the box of admitting that he commingled funds between Alameda Research and FTX. Quite interesting it is. So we'll have a rather interesting hearing tomorrow. But this time, in this circumstance, Mr. Sam Bankman-Fried will be secured and he won't be able to leave. He won't be able to continue with this tour of all the media outlets to twist the story, continuing to tell lies, to cover things up, and to change the narrative of everything that had gone on. Now, what irritated me the most was the fact that before the collapse of FTX, SBF was very cocky. He was coming off as the smartest man in the world. He was the next, I wanted to say Bernie Madoff, but that's the bad one. He was the next Warren Buffett, so to say, claiming that he was going to take billions of dollars and just give it all away after becoming the richest man in the world, so he could make the world a better place, to help us do better for planning for pandemics. Now that's kind of a scary thought. Think WEF. And also for eliminating hunger. And then we find out that none of that was true. What's interesting, though, is the fact that Sam won't be able to continue the lies in this hearing tomorrow. There's a reason why. As he makes his statements before the Congress, if he decides to continue to lie and to twist the truth, there's something called perjury. And if he's caught perjuring himself, he's only going to add to the enormous amount of years that he will be spending behind bars. So this should be very interesting. I fully expect him to have a full-on case of amnesia by the time that hearing gets started. But I digress. Sam Bankman-Fried went from the young billionaire genius, the newest brilliant person, to replace our stodgy old multi-billionaire Warren Buffett himself. So smart that he could create his own exchange, that he could make millions and millions of dollars on Bitcoin arbitrage, and then turn around and raise billions and start an exchange and reach the top virtually overnight. And now, after the collapse, he turns into a bumbling, forgetful nincompoop who apparently made several big embarrassing mistakes. Where were you when Alameda was making all these risky investments? Well, I was busy. Were you aware of what Alameda was doing? Well, I had a full-time job to do, and I couldn't control two companies at the same time. Forget the fact that he started both of those companies. What happened to all of the money after the collapse? Well, I'm not sure because I don't have any of my data in front of me. That really got my goat. How could you go from the smartest man in the history of the world, youngest, smartest, richest multi-billionaire, to a fumbling, bumbling, forgetful, incompetent nincompoop who can't remember anything, who makes big embarrassing mistake after big embarrassing mistake, giving that as an excuse for losing $13 billion that vanished in a matter of days? I don't know. That's incredible. Well, tomorrow, I don't think he's going to be able to keep that story up. And the best he can probably do is say, I have no comment, because there's not going to be any wiggle room out of this at this point. The simple fact that he is being detained, this tips the scales in the favor of the fact that he will be put behind bars, because we are assuming that he is a dangerous enough person, which he is, that it is beyond risky to let him run free before that hearing takes place. So this will be an interesting watch, and I will be hoping that I can catch the entire hearing. And if I don't, I will be watching the whole replay. And we'll see after this hearing how the politicians explain their way out of this mess. Because that's my biggest disappointment. Disappointed in our elected officials that would get in bed with someone who is this much of a criminal, who could cause this much financial damage the world over, that they would take that ill-gotten money just to better themselves in an election situation. That's pretty disgusting. And I think it's up to all of us. It is our responsibility to reach out and speak to our elected officials and voice our displeasure in how they so quickly jumped into bed with this criminal. And don't think that Gary Gensler, the head of our Securities Exchange Commission, is just completely out of this. He still has not provided too much of an explanation as to how he was not able to protect consumers from the fallout of what happened with FTX. Now, it's not for sure if the meetings that he had in private with SBF were collusion or not. He claims that they're not, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt. However, that doesn't erase the fact that something of this enormity happened on his watch. So at best case scenario for Gary Gensler, you are the worst Securities Exchange Commissioner that we have ever had, because your job was to protect the American public, and you failed it in the biggest way possible. Well, that's all I've got for now. Post your comments below and tell me what you think is going to happen tomorrow when SBF is hit with the questions in the grilling of this hearing. Do you think he's going to answer honestly, or do you think he's going to plead the fifth? I'd love to know. And that's all I've got for now. But I would love it if you would like, comment, and subscribe to the Crypto Pro channel. And if you feel so motivated that you would like to help support me in defraying the cost of production of these videos, you may do so with a super thanks. Just like my good friend Carl, who gave a super thanks last week in the amount of $10. Thank you, Carl, for your continued support. That's all I have for now. Stay tuned. I will have much, much more for you very soon. This is Carlton, and I am out.